begin with something that often goes unnoticed in the busyness of daily life: the quiet power of our thoughts. Most of us live on autopilot without realizing that what we're experiencing day to day is often being shaped not by big decisions or outside events, but by subtle, repetitive thought patterns. A single thought can feel small. Maybe it's a moment of doubt or an old fear that passes through. But when the same kind of thoughts show up repeatedly, especially ones charged with emotion, they start to leave an imprint. That imprint sparks a feeling. That feeling influences how we respond. And over time, that response becomes a behavior, a default setting. Before we know it, we're living in a loop. It's familiar, it's persistent, and it often feels like it was just who we are. But here's the truth that gets lost. Those thoughts aren't the real issue. They're messengers. What keeps the loop alive is the emotional energy underneath them. A single feeling, if left unacknowledged, can generate thousands of thoughts over time. And if those feelings remain unprocessed, thoughts will continue to cycle through your awareness like background noise you can't switch off. What many people try to do is solve this at the surface by thinking more positively, using affirmations, or avoiding the so-called bad thoughts. But that approach rarely brings lasting relief because the issue isn't just mental, it's emotional. Until we allow ourselves to feel what's there beneath the mental chatter, the loop keeps running.
Yes. And I want to highlight that point even further. We often give our thoughts too much credit. We believe that if we could just think differently, everything would change. But real transformation doesn't start in the mind. It starts in the body, in the emotional system. Thoughts are fast. They're slippery. They change shape. But emotions? Those are dense. They're slow moving and they linger. A thought might flicker through and be gone in seconds, but the emotional residue it leaves can stay with us for hours, days, or even years. That's why trying to think your way out of a deeply emotional pattern doesn't work. It's like painting over mold. The surface might look clean, but the root issue hasn't gone anywhere. What we see is that people end up trapped in cycles of thought, not because they're mentally weak, but because there's unresolved emotional material feeding the cycle. And until that's addressed, the thoughts will just keep recycling. The only effective way out is through. And that means becoming present with the emotion, not analyzing it, not fixing it, not distracting from it, but simply being with it. This might sound subtle and even passive, but it's powerful because the moment you stop resisting and feeling, it begins to shift. The nervous system calms, the emotional change begins to dissolve, and the mental noise that was built on top of that charge starts to fall away. You don't have to think better. You just have to stop feeding the thoughts with unprocessed emotional energy.
And that shift from managing thoughts to allowing feelings is what breaks the loop. But it's not something most of us are taught. In fact, we're conditioned to do the opposite. We suppress, we distract, we overanalyze, or we go into performance mode, smiling, staying busy, staying productive, all in an effort to outrun a discomfort we never quite know. There are three common patterns people fall into when they avoid feelings. The first is suppression. This is when we push that emotion down and pretend it's not there. We try to stay functional, composed, or even helpful to others, while internally carrying the weight of what hasn't been processed. Over time, suppressed emotions don't disappear. They store themselves in the body, and they show up later as tension, fatigue, illness, or burnout. The second is expression without awareness. This happens when we feel the emotion but immediately react. through arguments, venting, or overreaction. It can feel cathartic in the moment, but it doesn't resolve anything at all. It keeps the loop alive because we're still identified with the story behind the feeling rather than the signal the emotion is sending. And finally, there's escapism. This is the most subtle. It can look like overworking, overhelping, or constantly chasing goals. Or it can look like digital overload, scrolling, binge watching, staying distracted. It creates a temporary sense of relief, but the emotion doesn't go anywhere. It just waits and it resurfaces later again. None of these responses are wrong. They're adaptations, they're coping mechanisms, but they don't create resolution, then delay it.
And that's why surrender is so important. I don't mean surrender as in giving up. I mean allowing the feeling to be present without trying to judge it, fix it, or assign meaning to it. That's where real resolution begins. When people hear the word surrender, the ego often pushes back. It'll say things like, "You're being weak," or "This isn't working," or "You have to do more." That's normal. The ego is built to maintain control, to protect your familiar identity even. Even if that identity is wrapped in the stress or fear. So yes, surrender challenges the ego, but it also begins to unravel the false narratives that keep us locked in the old patterns. Practicing surrender doesn't mean you have to sit in suffering. It means you have to create space. You notice the feeling. You feel where it is in your body. Tightness in the chest, tension in the jaw, heaviness in the gut. You breathe with it. You allow it to be there without rushing to escape or explain it. And eventually, something remarkable happens. It passes. The system recalibrates, not because you forced it, but because you stopped resisting. That's when you realize the emotion isn't the problem. It's the resistance to the emotion that creates that loop. Once that resistance dissolves, the thought patterns collapse. You no longer believe every anxious thought. You're no longer emotionally charged by them. They become a background noise. And in that quiet, you reconnect with something deeper, your true self, which was never broken to begin with.
And that reconnection is the real transformation. When the loop ends, it's not just about feeling better. It's about remembering who you are underneath the layers of habit, fear, and emotional history. It's not a process of becoming someone new. It's actually a return, a peeling back of what you're not. This process doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough. In fact, some of the most powerful shifts are quiet. You simply stop doing the things that keep the loop alive. You stop resisting what wants to be felt. And as you do, you change. Not because you forced change, but because you allowed it. The ego will try to make this complicated. It will say, "You're not doing enough," or "This should be faster," or "What if you fail?" But you can meet those thoughts with curiosity. You can pause. You can breathe. You can say, "Yes, I hear that voice, and I'm choosing not to follow it today."
That's the practice. It's simple, but it's not always easy. It requires patience, presence, and compassion. But you know what? It's worth it. Because as you move through this process, your internal landscape changes. Your external world reflects that shift. Relationships feel different. Choices become clearer. You're no longer reacting from a wound. You're responding from awareness. Letting go of the negative thought loop isn't about conquering your mind. It's about befriending your own inner experience. And once you do that, the patterns that once felt unshakable begin to dissolve. You find that the peace you were chasing was never outside of you. It was always there, beneath the noise, just waiting to be uncovered.
If you found this video helpful, go ahead and give it a like, please, and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that bell. We've got more conversations like this coming up soon. Drop a comment if something landed with you, or if you've got questions. We always read them. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. And until next time, think differently, dream boldly, and create consciously.